If you're watching this video right now, you already have the feeling that the history of the world as we're told doesn't sound so right. Take a look at the state of the world today. Compare it to the achievements of our ancestors. Yet people think little of them, assuming they were less developed and not as intelligent as us. What if that was wrong? What if they had a great understanding of the world and reality and left it all in what we assume to be their mythology? This is not just a story of gods and titans clashing in the ethereal heights of Olympus. It's a tale that weaves through the very fabric of human existence, influencing our past, present, and our future. As of now, I'm not sure if this is going to be a single video or a series. There is a lot to go through, but we must begin somewhere. First, we choose a starting point, and the starting point is Greek mythology, specifically Gaia and Uranus. Uranus was castrated by Kronos. What was Gaia to Uranus? Was his mother. Let's continue. All Greek gods and their ancestors are titans who came from the void, by some accounts, Tartarus. When Kronos usurps Uranus, Kronos becomes the ruler of the titans. Does Kronos mate with Gaia, and if so, who are the children? As I narrate all these events for you, I'm going to ask questions, and I want you to keep them in mind throughout the video. Zeus is Kronos' son, and eventually usurps Kronos. Zeus' MO is to impregnate women of the local tribes and produce genetically stronger children, who will perform his tasks as heroes. However, there is one tribe or cult in Greece that despises Zeus. They despise Zeus so much that they move further west from Greece and establish a trading colony. This trading colony is eventually called Saturnia, in the honor of Kronos. Do you know by what name we know Saturnia nowadays? Rome, of course. Let's continue. So Kronos is able to recruit a cult in Greece to put him back in power. This cult travels west to Italy, a rugged country filled with trading outposts, and lays the foundations for an empire that will overthrow Greece as the dominant power in the world. The cult of Kronos, now Saturn, bide their time in Rome while Greece conquers the world. As Greece begins to decay, more and more cultists of the Olympians shift to Rome. However, the power structure is already established. Kronos rules in Rome. Now, in parallel to building and protecting Rome, Kronos approached a merchant in the Levant desert to begin the process of creating a new race of people for himself. Zeus had the Greeks, and Kronos realized to have influence on the planet, he needed the numbers. Do you know which old man and his old wife Kronos' emissaries approach with the promise of a child in return of a life of long servitude to Kronos? Kronos has recruited Avram. Avram is old and is willing to obey Kronos' command to the letter. He promises that all his children, and their children will serve Kronos, who at the time avoids giving Avram his true name. Zeus gets the wind of Kronos' plan to genetically engineer a superior race, and once and for all foils all such future plans by ensuring the children of Avram, now Abraham, are enslaved by the Egyptians. Thus, Kronos' plans are foiled for the first time by Zeus. The children of Avram are enslaved and cannot be bred to match the physical superiority of the Greeks. Remember, the Greeks were genetically superior because they had the genes of the gods. If I tell you the origin of the current human race, this video will get nuked in no time. So I'll just say this: Homo sapiens evolved around 300,000 years ago. 100,000 years ago, the Earth entered into a new ice age. When we came out of the ice age, around 12,000 years ago, instead of there being a singular human race, since everyone had to migrate to the equator to stay alive, we now had multiple races. Specifically, Caucasians / Greek gods / Yamnaya, whatever you want to call them, Africans with high melanin index, and the races with epicanthic fold, Chinese, Koreans, Mongolians, Japanese, etc. Of these three races, genetically, only the Africans and Mongoloids make sense. The epicanthic fold evolved to protect the human eye from drying out in windy and cold climate, and from very sunny climate too. and the high melanin index of the African skin was to protect from high IVU content in the equator. However, Caucasians don't make sense evolutionarily until you examine all the origin of the mythos of Caucasian tribes. If humans evolved 300,000 years ago and they advanced technologically for 200,000 years with no place to escape the Ice Age, where would these technologically advanced humans have escaped to on Earth? That is, where is Tartarus on Earth? Let's continue. So Kronos' plans are foiled by Zeus, who ensures the children of Abraham are enslaved by the Egyptian. Kronos manages to free the children of Abraham at a high cost. His plans of genetically engineering a physically superior race are completely foiled by Zeus. Thus, Kronos chooses another option, to genetically engineer an intelligent race. However, all intelligence begins with language. Language gives you the power to differentiate between your emotions, to separate your reptilian mind from the conscious mind. But simply giving intelligence to a race is problematic. Too much intelligence and they are no longer under your control. Thus, Kronos was very severe on the children of Abraham. They had to abide by a strict code of conduct and use a specific language that would both increase their intelligence and enslave them at the same time. We know what practices traumatizes them from a young age, the males specifically, and we know why the daughters of Abraham do not stray from the service of Kronos as well. Let's continue. The 12 tribes that escaped Egypt established a colony in the Levant, in a spot chosen by Kronos. It was a holy spot because the Levant was the last stop on the spice road from China. Before the Greek Dark Age, the spice road from China carried the most valuable merchandise ever traded on planet Earth. Humans, specifically human children. Trafficking in humans was the most profitable and the most powerful profession to be a part of. Though most human races would have balked at the idea of trafficking humans, Kronos' sons agreed to obey his word to the letter. They kept feeding Kronos over the years, slowly enabling him to harvest enough stem cells to replenish his energy and mount a comeback. Zeus was running out of time, the Greek Empire was waning, and thus the human trafficking network of the Greeks were providing Zeus and the Olympian gods with fewer humans, and thus fewer stem cells to harvest. Without stem cells, the immortality of Zeus and the Olympians was at risk. The leader of the Olympians did not dare to risk another war with Kronos, since the last one almost annihilated all the Titans. Instead, Zeus chose a soft coup. He used his age-old MO to plant an insurgent amongst the people of Kronos. Which woman amongst Kronos' tribe did Zeus impregnate? Jesus, of course, was not born as Jesus. His name was Yeshua. Jesus roughly translates to Zeus or from Zeus. Jesus grows up being trained by Zeus' emissaries. Eventually, Jesus is ready to be a Messiah. However, to be a Messiah, you need to have no ambition. That is the requirement to be Zeus' soldier. His will is your will, and you cannot have an independent will. Kronos gets wind of this and proceeds to meet Jesus in the desert. During the temptation of Christ, Kronos tries to convince Jesus of Zeus' tricks. Kronos reveals that he is the true ruler of this earth, and this is the only statement Jesus does not contest. That is the only clue provided to mortals in the New and Old Testament. Jesus did not contest Kronos' claim that Kronos has dominion over the earth. Jesus is the descendant of Kronos and Zeus' child. Since Zeus is Kronos' child as well, Kronos is willing to forgive him and accept him back into the fold. But Jesus already has too much power and a purpose with Zeus, hence he refuses. Kronos now has no choice but to use his cult in Rome to crucify Jesus. However, in the end, realizing his mistake, he begs Zeus to spare Kronos' children. Zeus has one window to destroy Kronos' people, and he misses it because his son is now dead. However, Kronos never forgives Zeus for his misdeeds and uses Jesus' teachings to start a new cult in Rome, Christianity. The Edict of Milan had two purposes, one overt and one symbolic. The overt purpose was to make Christianity the state religion. The symbolic purpose was to represent that all cults in Rome were now extinguished. The Edict of Milan signified the death of which group of titans? The Greek gods, of course. Let's continue. Jesus died approximately 2000 years ago. Kronos took Jesus' death personally. Zeus raising Jesus from his people signified two things. His people were still vulnerable, and that Zeus would attempt to do this again if left alone. The Republic of Rome had already fallen, and now was the time of the Roman Empire. The timing was perfect. All the power of Rome fell under the hands of the emperor and the cult of Saturn, Kronos. Rome began expansions in all areas. Wherever Zeus was worshipped, those territories were either wiped out or integrated to Rome. However, in order to beat the Olympians, Kronos needed to cut off their supply of humans, the stem cells, arriving from the east, from China. That was achieved when the Roman empires conquered Anatolia and basically controlled all the trade routes. After years of starvation, the Olympians were defeated and moved into myth. The world was now completely under the control of Kronos, or Saturn. However, there was still a problem. The Greek gods are reproduced with so many mortals in Greece that all of Greece carried their DNA. These children expanded across Europe. The most prominent children of the Greek gods were the Germanic tribes and the Italic tribes. Indeed, no matter how hard Kronos tried, his cult in Rome could not overthrow those tribes. Again, Zeus had undone Kronos' plans, but Kronos was known to be wily. Kronos decided to kill two birds with one stone. To ensure none of his people would have a messiah ambition, and to bring Zeus' children to heal, Kronos sold Christianity to all of Europe to Rome. The Catholic Church offered the resources of Rome in exchange for conversion to Catholicism. Kronos celebrated his victory over the children of Zeus with a 1,000-year dark age over the human mind. Which symbolic age ended the cult of Christianity in Rome? The Enlightenment, of course. Let's continue. The Edict of Milan was passed in February 313 AD. In March 1314, Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, was burned at the stake. The burning of Jacques de Molay ended the long-standing professional relationship between the cult of Kronos, the Catholic Church, and the Merovingians. The Merovingians were a special tribe because unlike the other Germanic tribes who had forgotten their true origin, Zeus and the other Greek gods, and believed to have descended from Odin, the Merovingians rejected the mythological origin and chose to start from a mortal, Merovec. However, Europe had been brainwashed by the cult of Kronos for 1,000 years, and the work must continue on the surface. Universities began propping up across all of Europe. To ensure a smooth transition, universities were initially meant to train monks and slowly shifted to engineering. In order to ensure that everyone suffered in the name of Zeus, Kronos has ordered the Catholic Church to wage war, brother against brother, man against man, for 1,000 years, so that humans would utterly lose their taste for war. However, one cannot abruptly stop the indoctrination. In order to smoothly shift from a war-based economy to a technology-based economy, wars continued in Europe, but expansions to other continents in the name of trade and imperialism was encouraged. In the 19th century, all the countries in the world were finally occupied. The final phase of the plan could now begin. However, the old world had to be broken down. The purpose of World War I was to push which group out of power? And the purpose of World War II was to push which country to the top of the power structure? It was, of course, the monarchs and United States. Let's continue. With the end of World War II, all aristocratic cults were decimated. Work could now begin to fulfill Kronos' agenda. However, history had shown that humans would drop their gods if they found their gods to be weak. A new method of ruling had to be brought about, one that did not overly impress the will of one person on the people. The Titans had spent 100,000 years underground during the Ice Age. They had advanced technology and understanding of human neurology. It was decided that human neurology would be exploited to make humans obey the will of Kronos. Money was poured into medicine, neuroscience, and economics research to research ideas that were already known to Titans. Experts and academics were hired to peddle ideas that were unimportant to the public, while those pliable to the cult were directed towards the right knowledge. The children of Abraham were given control of all communication lines in the world for 2 centuries, so that they could master the art of spin and illusion. The children of Zeus, on the other hand, were made to toil and fight wars. The races who had stayed over the surface and were not descended from the Titans were meant to be the slaves to the children of the Titans. The current phase of the plan was kick-started after DARPA achieved success with one of its military projects that found widespread commercialization. Do you know which DARPA invention revolutionized the world in late 21st century? The internet, of course. Let's continue. The cult of Kronos always desired surveillance. However, they always had to spend more energy on surveilling people than the benefits. With the internet, it finally became economical to spy on people. However, people did not adopt the internet. Humans never evolved with the internet. Thus, a mechanism was needed by which the adoption of the internet would be sped up. All the degeneracy that you see since the early days of the internet? Yeah, that's why. However, the true game changer was advancement in transistor technology. Data storage became cheap, and this enabled the old age weapon of the Titans, entertainment, theater, circus, to be hosted on the internet. Amazon was initially contracted by the CIA to control the supply chain lines of the world. However, with the advancement in transistor tech, plans had to be changed. Amazon was the closest possible company to achieving the goal of the cloud. Money was poured into Amazon. All companies that made advancement in cloud technology were either run out of business or absorbed by the companies subsidiary to the cult of Kronos. However, with so many changes, the cult of Kronos needs to quickly determine slave organizations that are manned by the children of Zeus. Hence, they again relied on symbology and symbolism to achieve this goal. Let me bring you back further in the past for a little bit. So our story begins about 300,000 years ago. Humans have figured out farming, or someone gave it to us. We don't know, and honestly it doesn't matter. See, farming changed the game for humans. All life on Earth is focused on survival. To survive, you need to eat. Suddenly, humans had the means by which they could produce food in large quantities. We don't know the exact events from 300,000 BC to 100,000 BC, but we do know that the last stage was not natural. It was triggered. Now, imagine that you've had farming for 200,000 years. You would have progressed to some degree, right? Look at us. We've had farming for 10,000 years, and here we are. So the Ice Age is upon Earth, and there are only two options. 1. Escape to space. Or 2. Dig underground. What's the closest habitable planet other than Earth? Let's continue. The dominant powers at the time decide that escaping to another planet is not a feasible idea. Or at least, if a group did decide to go to another planet, we've never heard from that group since. If you can't escape to space, the next best option is to dig underground. So about 100,000 years ago, there was a great cataclysm, be it natural or triggered by humans. We do know that there was severe flooding all over the world, but we do not know what caused the flood. Melting of the ice caps, weather control, whatever. There are two big problems with going underground. The temperature increases as you go deeper, and the pressure increases as you go deeper. The temperature increasing is good because you can exploit temperature gradients and generate electricity. However, pressure is not good. Humans are not meant to withstand high pressures. How do you ensure that people underground don't die due to high pressure? So you have a huge column of water over the surface due to severe flooding on the surface of the earth, and you have a high pressure as you go down. Of course, you cannot control the column of water above the surface, but you can control the pressure in your deep underground bunkers by sealing them shut. Of course, by sealing an underground bunker shut, it means that you have to ensure each bunker is self-sufficient in terms of water, food, and air. You can exploit the temperature gradient to generate electricity to power all your machines, but this power is sufficiently only to support a few people. Entire civilizations cannot escape at once. If you want to power continent-sized bunkers, as you see on the screen right now, what would be an ideal energy source? Let's continue. Now, here's the kicker. We know that Kronos and other titans came out from underground about 13,000 years ago, but they were not the first to go underground. That is, there are many bunkers all over the globe at different depths. We don't know if these bunkers are empty or occupied, but we know they're there. So humans going underground to avoid a cataclysm has been the norm for a very long time. But that's just the background of our story. Our story really begins with the titans coming to the surface and ruling over the earth. Answer me this. If the titans are gods, then why is it they influence humans to do their work? Why not use force to make man do their bidding? Let's continue. At this point, it is important to bring in reproduction and evolutions. The titans, or whatever they called themselves initially, were underground for more than 100,000 years. There were humans who escaped the last cataclysm on the surface by building boats, arcs, etc. But there was one major difference between the surface dwellers and the bunker dwellers. The surface dwellers, or those who escaped the last cataclysm by staying above ground, it appears, eventually settled back on the ground, but did not progress culturally or technologically. We suspect that is because they did not have much technology to begin with. See, when there is a cataclysm, it is the rich and powerful who have the means to create deep underground bunkers. The poor just wing it. But whatever be the case, the bunker dwellers engaged in significant inbreeding, and perhaps even encouraged it. However, the surface dwellers evolved like other animals in nature. Avoid close relatives while reproducing. Why? Well, because it lowers IQ and cognitive function in general, of course. Let's continue. Inbreeding has been used on multiple levels by humans to develop desirable traits in animals. Yet inbreeding in humans results in poor outcomes. The bunker dwellers, either willingly or unwillingly, rid themselves of the defective children by killing them. Stories of Cyclops in the Greek mythology? Not really far-fetched when you understand the relationship between Gaia and Uranus. And there is one thing that the Titans ended up benefiting from. Humans inherit the neural layout of their parents. That is, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. You have preferences, biases in decision-making like your parents. Since most of you are in the middle lower rungs of society, there isn't enough selective pressure to choose the best possible neural layout. Good enough will do. Now, imagine the effects of inbreeding in a bunker over 100,000 years on the neural maps of the children. After 20-30 generations, the personalities almost become identical. There are a few variations, but repeatedly inbreeding and keeping only the fittest ensures that only a selective few neural maps are repeatedly chosen by the bunker dwellers. So now you understood that the Titans have a base set of personalities, and any new Titan will have a personality in this base set. This is also the reason why the gods across Middle East and Europe have similar personalities. They are either the same god or reincarnation of the same personality, over and over again. But here's the beauty of this system. The base set of personality of the Titans is simultaneously their greatest asset and their greatest drawback. They have essentially evolved into organic computers. All their actions are purely on instinct. They are purely action-reaction machines. They no longer have true free will, the ability to change your neural map. Now that you've understood that the Titans are robots and the members of the cult of Kronos are wannabe robots, we can continue further. There's approximately 250,000 Titans. We suspect that they live underground, but they most likely are on the surface living among us. But that's not really a worry for most of us. It, however, becomes worrisome when the cult of Saturn creates artifacts such as the Georgia Guidestones. The Guidestones refer to humans, not Titans. With 500 million humans on the planet, each Titan will effectively control 2,000 humans in perpetuity. Even that would be comforting to us if we were not exploring space. The closest habitable planet is light years away, because Mars cannot be terraformed, and yet we're exploring space. However, the technology used for space can be repurposed to travel underground. Now that brings us to some uncomfortable questions. Why has the cult of Kronos been attacking deep underground bunkers? What can they possibly gain by destroying deep underground bunkers? They are covering their tracks, so we don't stumble into one of their hold homes. Global warming may not be real after all. Weather control has been a reality for a long time, and we've seen it used effectively over the past 8 years, to coincide with marches, elections, and other events. The universe is a code. Your genome is a code. Mixing between tribes may give you superior physical traits, but it models your neural map. The game of life is to be born, to survive, to try and reproduce and then die. All life forms on planet Earth are driven to survive. To survive, one must eat. That is the foundation of husbandry, domestication, and enslavement of animals. When a life form gives up its desire to seek food for itself and accept food from another organism, it is genetically ready to be enslaved. Enslavement of humans is at least as old as the farming of wheat after the last ice age. Indeed, it is a fact that also reveals where the true rulers of the planet might reside. Wheat farming began in Mesopotamia and Egypt, then moved to Greece. The current breadbasket of Europe is Ukraine. However, there is a major difference in the topography of Ukraine and the topography of Mesopotamia, Greece, and Rome. But let's continue. When life gives up its desire to hunt in exchange for food, life essentially acquiesces to slavery and domestication. Thus, in order to enslave humans en masse, you need to provide food en masse. There's many indigenous cultures around the world that have tried to live off of various starchy foods, but none have found as much success as the civilizations built on wheat and barley. Wheat and barley leapfrog a society ahead because they feed 50 people for the effort of one, when the single person works manually. Because if you bring in farming and other technology, one person's work can feed hundreds. Wheat grows well in semi-arid climates. But when you look at Mesopotamia, Greece, and Rome, there is a strange pattern. Mountains. Indeed, for civilization to arise and dominate, they need wheat and barley, but mountains? They make no sense, until you realize that these mountains are the abode of the gods. Mountains are the entry point to the bunkers of these gods. I ask you this. What are the 4 main writing systems in the world? Let's continue. When the world went into an ice age after the cataclysm for 100,000 years, those on the surface were reduced to hunter-gatherers because of the prolonged nuclear winter. They had to survive on what was available. When the bunker dwellers emerged after 100,000 years, the world was ripe for the taking. The first gift of the bunker dwellers to the hunters was farming, the means to sustain oneself without putting one's life at risk during a hunt. The second gift was that of language, the ability for humans to communicate with each other. However, language is a valuable gift. Evolution needs thousands, if not millions of years to enable a species to develop a language. Like killer whales, for example, who now have a proto-language. Language kickstarts a society's higher cognitive functions. Language enables members of a society to differentiate between their emotions, which is the most powerful evolutionary weapon of all. Thus, the bunker dwellers had to be prudent with the gift of language. In addition to language, the dwellers had to be prudent with the gift of writing, because writing enables a society to record history, to remember, as a collective people, and then pass this memory on to future generations. Thus, when the bunker dwellers arrived on the surface, their only gift to the surface dwellers was farming, in order to domesticate them. Their second gift was language. What is the insignia derived from Osiris that denotes pharaonic authority? Let's continue. Language was a gift that the bunker dwellers would not easily share with the surface dwellers. The people from the bunkers wanted to enslave the people from above, but they wanted to do it in a nuanced manner. This nuance manifested itself in the languages and script used by ancient civilizations. It is telling that Egyptians, Chinese, Mayans, and Aztecs used logographic languages. Logographic languages are the lowest form of language, where ideas, objects, concepts are represented as a whole using a symbol. Symbolic languages restrict the human thinking to an emotional state. Each human will associate his or her own emotions with a symbol. The next step in evolution are the alphabetical, Abjad, and Abugida languages. These languages permit the representation of complex ideas through words. Words are further broken down into vowels and consonants. Simply put, logographic languages do not encourage the human brain to imagine much, because the combinatorial capacity of the human brain is restricted in logographic languages, whereas alphabetical languages and such permit the use of combinatorial faculties of the human brain, since they merely provide the rules, the grammar, by which the alphabets can be manipulated, and the user can create new words to describe every new item they perceive. It is thus shocking to see similarities between Mesopotamian, Greek, and Roman gods and yet see differences in languages. Mesopotamia used cuneiform, which is symbolic or logographic, whereas the Greek and Romans use alphabetical. What was Prometheus' punishment for giving humans technology? Do you remember? Let's continue. Prometheus never gifted technology to humans. This was and always has been a lie. Prometheus gave humans the gift of alphabetical language. In essence, Prometheus gave humans the means to understand what the gods were writing in their documents. Indeed, it is Prometheus who is serpent in the Bible, giving Adam and Eve the power to understand the language of the gods. It is because of this knowledge that Adam and Eve were able to understand that they were merely test subjects and were naked in the eyes of God. To this day, we're uncertain whether it was Kronos or Zeus who punished Prometheus for giving the gift of alphabetical language to humans. But we do know that the Titans originally ruled over Mesopotamia and had to move westward to Greece because Prometheus gave the Mesopotamians the ability to understand the language of the gods. Once the Titans had determined the location of the new base in Greece, in the mountains, they had to repeat the cycle of enslavement. Humans were carted from Mesopotamia to Crete, and Greece, a new civilization, arose in the Mediterranean. When did Egypt move from a logographic language to alphabetical language? When Alexander the Great conquered the world, of course. Let's continue. By deducing the nature of language in each area of the world, it became clear that the same bunker dwellers did not rule in all parts of the world. Each part of the world either had its own dwellers emerge after the last ice age, or it was possible that all dwellers emerged from the same point and then decided to divide the world amongst themselves. Whatever be the case, almost all civilizations from the old world, which began because of the gift of farming to surface dwellers by bunker dwellers, were using some form of logographic language. Prometheus' treachery changed this. Civilizations now began to develop alphabetical languages. Indeed, to this day we know that the languages that have a common script in history imply that all people who speak these languages share a common history. By obtaining an alphabetical language, humans could now proceed with higher cognitive functions. The bunker dwellers had to move quickly if they were to nullify the gift of language to human beings. A mechanism was required by which humans could not be fully able to utilize the gift of language. When was democracy introduced to Greece? Let's continue. The evolution of Greece and Egypt are in stark contrast. The Egyptian language progressed as all slave language should progress, a slow transition from a logographic language to a summarized version of logographic language, to a permanent, symbolic language. The Chinese, for example, are now stuck in a perpetual slave cycle. Their language has evolved to contain more than 1400 symbols. Unlike alphabetical languages, their language constrains granularity, restricting an entire civilization's thinking. However, the Titans had, over 2000 years of trial and error, developed a mechanism by which the power of alphabetical language could be completely nullified. Democracy. Democracy gave everyone the illusion that they had a say in the manner the state was run. It gave politicians an excuse to blame others for their mistakes, and it gives everyone an illusion of a better system. However, civilization is inherently hierarchical, whereas democracy gives the illusion of equality. With democracy, the Titans had begun their long-standing method of psychological war on their slaves, inversion, to give everyone the illusion of something, while that something is entirely the opposite. Who were the Greek and Roman gods of agriculture? It was Saturn and Kronos, of course. Let's continue. Though Greece had democracy and would eventually conquer most of the world, enabling the Titans to wipe out the other dwellers, trouble was brewing among the Titans, Zeus and Kronos. Kronos was exiled by Zeus, and Kronos decided to settle in Latium, modern Lazio. Kronos gave the humans around Latium the gift of agriculture. In return, the humans around Latium formed the cult of Kronos, the cult of Saturn. Eventually, Rome was founded near that area. From Rome, Kronos was able to overthrow the Titans in Greece and bring these people out of Egypt. But we already discussed that before. We're talking about agriculture. Why? Because agriculture dictates the cycle of man, his fall and rise. What crop is depicted on the US Department of Agriculture's logo? Corn. Let's continue. As mentioned at the start, the domestication of man begins when man gives up his desire to hunt and fight for food, and instead accepts a means of continuous food from the gods. However, it is farming and husbandry that are often the initial gifts. Indeed, Osiris' symbol was both the crook and the flail. The crook symbolized the humans were the sheep of the gods, and the flail symbolized the manner in which the gods control their sheep, the wheat. The first crops gifted by the dwellers always enabled the surface dwellers to achieve superiority over their neighbors. It's wheat. Wheat enables the civilization to leapfrog forward from hunting and gathering. Once a civilization masters the farming of wheat, the bunker dwellers give the civilizations the gift of baking and other means to make long-lasting food from wheat. You can enslave the man in perpetuity, only if the language is logographic. Prometheus had already given man the gift of language, and this brings along with it a separate problem. However, the Titans managed to devise the mechanism of democracy. But democracy is not a foolproof method of control. In order to control humans in a democratic civilization, one must turn man against man, ambition against ambition. Only then can you rule from the top. The Titans were able to do this to a certain degree. However, eventually knowledge began to leak. Greek began to become smarter. Thus came the need to control them once more. The Titans had two choices: either use drugs or use a crop that has a higher fat and sweet content. Corn. Who brought corn to Europe? Let's continue. Corn drastically changes the sugar levels in your bloodstream and makes you a sugar addict. It is generally bad for the body and progressively ruins the teeth. If you want to subvert a civilization from within, replace wheat with corn. The civilization as a whole progressively becomes a group of addicts, ripe for a collapse. However, once you introduce corn into civilization, you need an army to collapse it. Here come the outsiders. The savages, the barbarians that the target civilization looked down upon, but to whom you have gifted the benefits of farming and wheat. Once a democratic society drunk with corn collapses, the bunker dwellers place a ruler on the throne. This has been the modus operandi of the Titans since at least the Minoan civilizations. The records of the Minoan democracy are all but lost since the Bronze Age collapse, but we have the records that survived. Thus, even though Prometheus gifted surface dwellers with the alphabet, the Titans managed to subvert this gift through democracy and corn. But both are trump cards. Once it is revealed that democracy is futile, no civilization would ever adopt it. Furthermore, the human body is not designed to continuously consume corn. How to then erase key information from the history such that corn and democracy are not fully understood? Do you know when the Greek Dark Ages were? And do you know when the Roman Dark Ages were? Look it up. And let's continue. The Dark Ages of Greece and Rome were anomalous, except they appeared to occur after a major triggering event. In the case of Greece, it was the Bronze Age collapse. In the case of Rome, it was the collapse of Egypt and the rapid counter-urbanization of Roman territories. But both these collapse events served one purpose: to systematically collect all records related to democracy and bring it under the office of the emperor, Greece, or a cult, Christianity in Rome. An even more nefarious event occurred during the fog of the Dark Ages: the removal of corn from the fields and records of both empires. This is the reason why the cycle perpetuates. It is not merely technology that enables the Titans to perpetuate their cycle. It is weaponization of corn and democracy. Symbolism plays a significant role in communication of the grand plan. When one searches through the agricultural departments of the world, one sees that it is only the US that has specifically adopted corn in the logo. There is a reason for this. The corn in the USDA logo denotes a civilization that will be collapsed into a dark age and whose democracy will be converted into a monarchy. This is achieved not by drugs, but simply by the weaponization of corn. Indeed, almost all agricultural departments in the world carry the coat of arms of the country or the country's insignia. It was no accident that corn was chosen and wheat discarded by the USDA when they prepared their logo. It was a symbolic message to all Titans across the world as to where the next collapse would occur. Which is the most widely used logographic language in the world today? Do you know? Let's continue. Logographic languages originated in Asia, in China and Mesopotamia, in Africa, in Egypt, and the Americas, Maya and Aztec, for example. We are now at the cusp of a great change in human history. All of these logographic languages have been wiped out of use, except one, Chinese. Symbolically, this means the Titans were able to wipe out almost all bunker dwellers from the last age. Only one major region remains to be cleaned, China. By removing logographic languages, the Titans remove the means by which other bunker dwellers can communicate with their slave race, forcing them into submission. Based on a historical trend, this would imply that the last set of bunker dwellers who have successfully run a slave race for more than 6 millennia now face an imminent threat from the Titans. To understand everything better, we now have to talk about the purpose of music. Humans did not evolve with music. It was genetically engineered into us. Music was used as a tool by civilizations to guide armies before the Ice Age. Humans were trained to perform actions while listening to certain music, and this was used on the battlefield in warfare. Decoding the enemy's musical instruction was almost useless, because your soldiers would experience negative emotions. Programming humans through music is now being utilized by Titans once again. The last Ice Age was more of a nuclear winter rather than a true Ice Age. Humans used nukes so often that it triggered a new Ice Age that lasted 100,000 years. Most of the people on the surface who survived are strongly related, genomically, to humans pre-Ice Age. This, combined with the propensity of bunker dwellers to reproduce among the population, has ensured that the current human population possesses a genome that is eerily close to pre-Ice Age humans. If the Titans lose, then we do not know how the Chinese will change the Earth, so we haven't heard from the Chinese gods in a long time. If the Titans win, then Earth as a whole will be broken into city-states, and pre-Ice Age diplomacy will be reinstated. Prometheus made the mistake of giving humans the gift of alphabetical language. Alphabetical language differentiates between vowels and consonants, providing its users with the ability to combinatorially create more words with predefined rules. With this combinatorial capability, the user of an alphabetical language can map every conceivable granularity of an artifact, object, an idea, a system in the world. And when one maps the universe in its total granularity, one knows the universe. The Titans, led by Kronos, realized that in order to take back control and undo Prometheus' mistake, a long-winded multi-millennia plan had to be put in place. There were multiple bunker dwellers who came out of the last ice age. However, it was the Titans who managed to successfully usurp power from all the other dwellers. We're now at the cusp of wiping out the remnants, or at least cut the supply lines off, the last bunker dwellers who went beneath the ground in China. But the plan for the new age has already been laid in place, even before we go to war with them. Music and language will be weaponized to the maximum extent. You see, the Kalergi plan was never to mix races. This is just the result everyone can observe. The purpose is more nuanced, the mixing of languages, and breaking man's control over his technology. Thousands of migrants were sent to Europe to degrade the alphabetical language into the Abjad language, Arabic. Abjad language are lower than alphabetical languages in the sense the vowels have to be inferred. This makes it an excellent tool by which to communicate important information. Those who need to know. Others can only guess. The widespread adoption of Arabic is merely 2 steps away from the final phase. Where did rap originate? Let's continue. By spreading Arabic across Europe, those who rule the world are merely 2 steps away from implementing the final caste system on the planet. In this advanced caste system, those at the bottom will have no access to language or writing. Those who are one rung above the lowest will have language but no writing. Language and writing will be restricted to the higher classes for statecraft and bureaucracy. But if language will be completely eliminated from the lower classes, then by what mode will those who rule provide instructions? The answer lies in music. Humans didn't evolve with music, it was bred into us before the last ice age, remember? It is a tool to provide instructions. Ordinarily, one would have to communicate the precise meaning of an instruction to language. However, in the final plan, those at the bottom levels of society, soldiers, or food for those who rule, will be instructed via music. Decoding musical instructions is utterly useless because listening to the enemy's music only generates adverse reactions in your own soldiers. Music is also convenient with respect to broadcasting information over wide areas. Your soldiers will understand and love your music while hating the music of the enemy. This is why there was a boom in this industry in the 60s. It used to be the domain of the public for entertainment, but is now used as a means to degrade language. The best example for this is rap, which continuously degrades alphabetical language by developing its own lexicon. In order to be part of the club, you must understand this lexicon. By promoting an inferior language as superior, those who rule the earth push the inferior genes to the bottom. But rap could not have been distributed across the world with such efficiency. It was necessary to first lay a foundation. When was Hollywood established? Let's continue. Hollywood was funded with the sole purpose of creating visual stories that encourage humans to let go of their traditions and lead a new life. Kronos knew that humans are susceptible to visual stories because humans do not have the means to differentiate between movies and reality. That is, the brains of all humans mistakes movies for realities and forms memories of the same. Only with experience can these memories be undone. But by then the damage has been done since you've lived your life according to these values, the values of Hollywood. However, Hollywood didn't make the inroads that Kronos wanted. Instead, a new technique had to be devised by which the plan of a new world could be accelerated. When the Titans faced no opposition in China with communism, they knew the Chinese gods had either let go of China or were not as powerful as before. The stage was set to bring forth the next stage of communication, the internet. Each time the Titans wished to strengthen their hold onto their slaves, they gave poison to their slaves in the guise of gifts. Christianity, for example, was Kronos' greatest poison to Zeus's children, an ideology based on inversion. One that puts men in perpetual pain and reduces women to reproductive devices. But in order to accelerate their plan on a global level, the Titans needed something more than just a religion or the ideology. They needed a means of speeding up communications across the world. Who were the main stakeholders in laying down the transatlantic number 1 cable across the Atlantic? It was a joint project. One between the General Post Office of the UK, the AT&T company, and the Canadian Overseas Telecommunications Corporations. And do you know what was the profession of the father of AT&T's founder? His father was a professor of physiological phonetics and was the author of numerous works on orthopy and elocution. Let's continue. Language is a gift. It begins the process of higher cognitive functions, yet different races, when led to their own devices, evolve their own dialects over time. This is not a coincidence, it is genetic and is dependent on each race's ability to speak a language fluently. Thus, when the bunker dwellers begin a civilization, they gift everyone with the same language. This language is spread over the sphere of control of the dwellers with the capital, or the center of operations, controlling all aspects of the language. Thus, when one group of bunker dwellers defeats another group, they seek to wipe out the original language. By wiping it out, the victors ensure the latest generation of people on the defeated side are disconnected from the original ancestry and genomics. This cleaves the losing faction from its entire history, and over time, the original bunker dwellers lose control. Do you know what the root of the word Latin is? And what is the original script from which both Latin and Greek alphabet are derived? Let's continue. When Prometheus gave the Mesopotamians the gift of language, Zeus and the other titans broke civilization off in two different directions, one to the east and one to the west. In the east rose Sanskrit and its derivatives, and in the west rose Greek and its derivatives. In Mesopotamia, the Proto-Iranian language, the Avestan, began to form. Why are Greek, Avestan, and Sanskrit special? Because they explicitly deal with vowels. Vowels have a special place in human evolution. Vowels are the sounds that a human, or creature claiming to be human, can make without the stricture of the vocal tract. The knowledge of vowels displays an advanced understanding of human anatomy. Most civilizations did not know the usefulness of vowels till Proto-Indo-European languages reached them. This is the gift of Prometheus to mankind, and all those who speak a language which explicitly deals with vowels share a common history and genome. Indeed, the children of Abraham are cut from a different cloth. Kronos made sure of this. This is why both Arabic and Hebrew do not deal with vowels. They have to be inferred. We're about halfway through our story right now. I will leave it for a second video and let you digest all this information. If you have questions, post them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer. But do your own research, it's important. Information must come at a price. Peace out, boyos. See you next video.